Welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Kieft, welcoming you to our live, local, 5 days a week TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. Today, we'll be talking to a whole host of people about fun stuff and important news stories right here in the Great Lakes State. Now, normally, of course, we would go through our top headlines, but again, today, we have a packed show ahead. So let's quickly go through some of our resources at civiccentertv.com. On our Megacast page at civiccentertv.com/Megacast, you'll find information on our entire network of TV, radio, and web stations across the state of Michigan, as well as local news making headlines in every region of the state. On our local news page on civiccentertv.com/local-news. Now that we've taken care of that, and you can view all that content on our website from a variety of different networks and platforms, let's head into what we're doing on today's program. With that, let's get started. Now through Monday, you can bid on a number of items of sports memorabilia and other items as well, and participate in a golf outing on Monday at the Wingate Country Club in Rochester Hills. And it's all in support of the Kirk Gibson Foundation. Joining us now on the program is the foundation's COO, Michelle Newman. Michelle, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Appreciate having you on. So first off, just tell us a little bit about the Kirk Gibson Foundation and who it helps to serve here in the state of Michigan.
Sure. So we are a Parkinson's Foundation. We aim to serve the Parkinson's community by providing activity-based programs to improve the quality of life for Parkinson's patients. Exercise and movement really helps ease some of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. We have several programs that are currently providing some great help for that community, and we are also looking into some future programs that we can bring to the Michigan community.
And in terms of the history of this organization, obviously it was founded by Kirk Gibson, who is a renowned former baseball player as well as a Michigan State football player back in the day. Also, can you tell us about the history of the foundation and what prompted Kirk Gibson to find this organization after his diagnosis with Parkinson's disease?
Sure. Kirk launched his foundation back in 1996 scholarship program. Both of his parents were teachers here in Michigan, and he provides annual scholarships to local high schools. And after he was diagnosed in 2015, he expanded the scope of the foundation to help the Parkinson's community through either research-based grants or programming.
So as was mentioned with this fundraiser going on, there is a sixth annual golf classic is going on Monday at the Wingate Country Club in Rochester Hills. People can still participate now through Monday. The silent auction began on the web on Monday of this week, and it ends on Monday, August 22nd. In terms of the golf classic, can people still participate in that event the day of?
So the day of the Kirk Gibson Golf Classic is sold out for this year. We do have the silent auction open for access to anyone, and you can access that at golfwithgibby22.givesmart.com. As you mentioned, we have some great MLB jerseys signed by multiple teams, by some of the all-stars of today, and some other great items as well. And all proceeds from that auction do go in the fight against Parkinson's.
KirkGibsonFoundation.org is their website, KirkGibsonFoundation.org for more information on their 6th annual Golf Classic and silent auction. The auction is live now through Monday. When on Monday does the auction, and how long do people have to continue to bid on these items?
So it will close Monday afternoon, and the timing will be a little bit specific to when the golfers finish their round of golf. If you are an active bidder, you will receive an alert of when the auction will close, approximately half an hour and 15 minutes beforehand, but it'll be sometime in the late afternoon.
And beyond this golf outing and the silent auctions going on, what other opportunities are there for fundraising or for people to support the Kirk Gibson Foundation in the future?
So we do have a team, Team 23, that's running. We're an official charity partner of the Detroit Free Press Marathon in October. So far, we have over 50 runners sign up, varying distances, 5K, half marathon, marathon. We have a fundraising platform through GoFundMe to raise funds. Many people run on either behalf of a family member or a friend who have Parkinson's. We do have several members of our team who have Parkinson's that are running this event. And we also encourage people, if they have ideas for fundraisers of their own, they can reach us, email us at team23@kirkgibsonfoundation.org.
KirkGibsonFoundation.org is the website for more information on everything that they do at the organization, donation opportunities, upcoming events, and more, including information on their ongoing silent auction, as well as the 6th annual golf classic, which unfortunately is sold out, but you can get more information on next year's event and going forward at KirkGibsonFoundation.org. We're joined by the foundation's COO, Michelle Newman. Michelle, before we let you go, anything else that we haven't discussed yet today about the foundation or upcoming events and initiatives that the community should know about?
The Detroit Free Press Marathon is our next event that we have. You can also sign up for that at freemarathon.com. And we have some exciting things that we're working on that we're looking forward to announcing towards the end of the year.
Michelle, appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
KirkGibsonFoundation.org for more information on this year's 6th annual golf classic, as well as their silent auction running now through Monday. You can bid on a number of different items, MLB jerseys, football and basketball items, and more, some of them autographed. KirkGibsonFoundation.org for more information. Let's take a short break, and when we return, we'll talk mental health on the Megacast.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine. I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Connect with local leaders, philanthropists, and more. The Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce presents the 2022 Leadership Breakfast. Join the Chamber for a morning of insight with guest speaker Laura Granneman, with the whole event emceed by Fox 2 News anchor Roop Raj. Join your local businesses at the Wabeat Country Club September 13th at 8:30 a.m. Order your tickets by September 6th at westbloomfieldchamber.com/breakfast. We'll see you there.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 1-hour show about all things Oakland, about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV. It's time to go back to school, and whether you are a parent worried about navigating the complicated world of childcare or helping your kids with homework and so on, other issues as well, or you're a student concerned about starting a new challenge with a new school year, it can be very stressful this time of the year. Joining us now to talk us through that is Carrie Krawiec from the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Carrie, thanks for being with us today.
Of course. Thank you.
Appreciate having you on. So as you get to this time of the year and you're talking to parents and you're talking to younger people who are going back into the thick of things with school, whether it be in elementary, middle, or high school, or beginning their college journey or going into the workforce, what are some of the common issues that do come up about this time of year as people are getting ready to go back to school?
Right. I think it is, even though it's not the new year, everybody does experience a little bit of a new year around this time. So,
Yeah.
on the positive side, people are motivated to set goals and make changes and almost a resolution of sorts. But then other people are really experiencing anxiety, probably a sadness for maybe a fun and relaxing summer and one of our first since the pandemic where things were really, very enjoyable, and then going back to that grind is going to be a little shocking for everybody.
And especially for students that are going back into school after a couple of pretty tumultuous years of back and forth from being in school to being at home, from all the COVID restrictions and regulations that were in place, and just the uncertainty that came with being in the school environment. How do you suggest for parents as well as for teachers and administrators to address those anxieties from their students?
Well, I think the first most important thing is to accept and acknowledge it, not try to deny it. I mean, school years for kids of all ages and parents too, and teachers too, are stressful. They come with a lot of stresses embedded in them, separating from your parents, meeting expectations, dealing with social pressures or, new social experiences. All of those things separately would cause any of us anxiety. So it's no surprise when they happen all at once that they would cause anxiety, especially to like the youngest members of our community. And, additionally, then you add the pandemic and managing protocols as well as fears about becoming sick or unwell and school violence, which we've also encountered in the last couple years. All of that is just, I would say, to embrace the anxiety and say, of course, we're feeling anxious. To not deny it or minimize it would be one of the first tools that every adult should be using when they're encountering an anxious kid or person.
In terms of educators in the classroom, when these anxieties, when these other issues that are maybe being caused by the stress of going back to school or just being in that environment, when these come to pass and they are becoming an issue in the classroom, what suggestions do you have for teachers and for other administrators as well to address those issues with these students in a way that's productive for them, but also isn't putting more pressure on that student, given the environment that they're already in, being in some cases a catalyst for that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one skill we could all strengthen, whether it's adult to adult, parent to child, teacher to child, in our own lives and relationships, is our brain is like a super highway, right? And we get a piece of information and our brain just runs with it, but we actually can create new paths in our brain. And so I always say the 5-to-1 ratio, which is for every one negative thought we have, or sort of every one unhelpful way we have looking at a situation, if we can come up with at least 5 other alternatives, 5 other options, they might not just be positive, but as long as they're sort of realistic, it helps give our brain a little more information to work with. And therefore, we're not stuck on just our one anxious, unhappy, unpleasant thought.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec from the Birmingham Maple Clinic on the Megacast. You can find more information and get in contact with the professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic by visiting birminghammaple.com. Birminghammaple.com is their website for more information. You can also call them at 248-646-6659. That's 248-646-6659 for more information. They are located on West Big Beaver Road in Troy, Michigan. And Carrie, in terms of parents, what are some of the common anxieties that they're encountering this time of the year, and how do you address that, especially because those anxieties can often then be picked up by the kids as well?
Sure. And I think like I said before, it's just like owning it and accepting it. One gift we can give our kids, even if we're feeling anxious, is to say, these are the things I'm noticing in myself that are making me anxious. And these are the things I'm going to do to take care of it. Like I'm going to take a walk, or I'm going to call a friend, or I'm going to talk to my own supportive therapist or other person who can be helpful to me. So modeling for kids that anxiety is normal, but also the skills to reduce it are normal and accessible and available, and that talking about it is okay. From a resiliency standpoint, kids and families where there is comfort talking about hard things bounce back better during future hard things than ones where all those hard feelings are shoved away.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec from the Birmingham Maple Clinic on the Megacast. You can find more information by visiting their website at birminghammaple.com for more information. Another anxiety for parents too is when their kids are going off to school or going off into the adult world without them and leaving the home for the first time in some of these cases for a long period of time. For parents that are having anxieties about that, what suggestions do you have about different steps or coping mechanisms that they can take to ensure that they're relieving their anxiety, again, without having too much of an impact on others in their life?
Sure, I think it's such an important time, and one of them is just really acknowledging boundaries, probably talking and planning with your child or adult child ahead of time. How much contact or communication do you want or need with me? Can we sort of create a plan, maybe for some structure, some regular routine conversations or meetups, but not necessarily all the time? What would or could or should a parent do if they've got a college age or adult child going off into the world in terms of using Find My Device or whatever else, like in what ways should they be supervising and what ways they should be hands off? It's certainly appropriate to kind of predict and plan for what might I be worried about if I don't hear from you for X many hours. What would I be expected to do? What do you expect of me? Trying to at least predict and plan for as many problem areas as you can imagine, in hopes that you would never have to use them or would never become sort of a conflict where one feels maybe a little overbearing.
Carrie Krawiec joins us on the Megacast. She is from the Birmingham Maple Clinic, joining us on the program today. You can find more information and get in contact with the folks at the Birmingham Maple Clinic by visiting birminghammaple.com or calling 248-646-6659, 248-646-6659 for more information. And it's also at birminghammaple.com. In terms of the college students that are the incoming college students, that can be a pretty daunting environment for them as well, especially if they're going to larger universities, even those right here in the state of Michigan, such as the University of Michigan, Michigan State. Those are relatively large campuses with a lot of people and a lot of moving parts. That can be pretty anxiety inducing for anybody, let alone someone that's completely new to that environment and going in alone in many cases as well. What sort of coping mechanisms do you suggest for them to adjust to that new paradigm in their life?
Absolutely. And I think, right, for parents too, sending their kids into those environments can also be anxiety producing. I think for one is normalizing it, and two, taking an evaluation of what do you know? So like, what is the information I do have? What do I know? What problems could I predict? What tools or skills or ideas do I have? And I think one thing that parents can do, even to their emerging adult kids, is instead of saying, well, like, of course you haven't thought of, where are you going to park your car underneath a lighted, area or something, instead of saying it that way, giving the direction, sit back and let your kids tell you, have you thought about what you might do if you driving to your dorm late at night? Like, let them give you the information, and then you get to congratulate them for having a brilliant idea, as opposed to them feeling like their parent is like, doesn't think they can handle it. I mean, you really want to foster the idea that of course they can.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec on the Megacast. She's from the Birmingham Maple Clinic on today's program, located in Troy, Michigan. More information, birminghammaple.com. That's birminghammaple.com to find them online, or you can call them at the phone number 248-646-6659, 248-646-6659 for more information. Carrie, another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that you're seeing pretty commonly in your office and in your practices right now, or that your colleagues are seeing in the community that would be important for us to address and maybe have some advice on?
I think right now, this time of year, it's really normal, that kind of getting off the screens and back to the routines, is probably one thing we're seeing parents really battle a lot with. The like sort of emerging expectation, especially in the communities nearby here. There's been parents manage a lot for their kids. If something's forgotten, then something is brought to them, or something, if something is lost, then something new is bought. And I think parents are feeling that kind of both resentment and anxiety, that like, do their kids have what it takes to do some of the stuff on their own? And so I think parents right now, especially as we're transitioning from the summertime to the school year, are trying to find a way, what are the things that could and should be our children's responsibilities, and what things do we as parents have to supplement, but also without kind of burning ourselves out as well.
Carrie, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
BirminghamMaple.com for more information on all the practices at the Birmingham Maple Clinic and to get in contact with them. You can also call them at 248-646-6659, 248-646-6659. We'll take a break on the Megacast. When we come back, how inflation is impacting retail, plus the lucrative business of a gubernatorial campaign. This is the Megacast.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine. I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Connect with local leaders, philanthropists, and more. The Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce presents the 2022 Leadership Breakfast. Join the Chamber for a morning of insight with guest speaker Laura Granneman, with the whole event emceed by Fox 2 News anchor Roop Raj. Join your local businesses at the Wabeat Country Club September 13th at 8:30 a.m. Order your tickets by September 6th at westbloomfieldchamber.com/breakfast. We'll see you there.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 1-hour TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV. Joining us now on the Megacast is Michael Greiner. He's an assistant professor of management at Oakland University. Michael, thanks for being on the show today.
Happy to be here, Tyler. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday to you as well. Appreciate having you on. So the last time we were on, we talked a lot about inflation, what it is, how this current situation we're in with inflation was kind of sparked, and the impact it's continuing to have on the economy, despite everything that we're hearing about inflation and the way that's it's affecting the price of goods. People are still out shopping, and particularly in retail. July's retail sales data from the Census Bureau said that spending is still up amid biting inflation and other economic issues. It rose a healthy 0.7%. That being the retail sales, excluding auto and gasoline sales. So, what with the situation we have with the economy, with people's purse strings still being so tight because of inflation and rising prices, supply chain issues, what do you believe is still sparking so much of this retail spending on items that maybe aren't necessarily necessities?
Well, I think this comes back again to what we dealt with the COVID recession and basically the recovery plan that the government entered into, where there was all this money sent to people. So the irony is right now, even though people view the economy extremely negatively, according to all the surveys, when we ask about their personal finances, people are generally feeling pretty good about their own situation. They're not necessarily feeling good about the situation overall. So they feel comfortable spending money, and they're certainly out there doing it. Now, the one thing that is interesting to note is that because of inflation, even though people are spending more, they're not necessarily getting more, unfortunately. So as a result of that, they're essentially buying what they have been buying, but it's costing them more money as a result of the inflation, which can be pretty frustrating. But by the same token, people aren't necessarily feeling constrained by that because they did get that assistance from the government earlier on in the year. And one more thing I think that's important to talk about is just how we've had these weird shifts in what people have been buying. And this has had a real impact on the retail space, actually, because as we know, before COVID, people were mostly spending their money on restaurants. It was the first time ever that people spent more money eating out than they did eating at home. And then, of course, we got COVID. All of a sudden, people stopped going to restaurants. Instead, they were remodeling their kitchens. They were buying new refrigerators and stoves. Rather than going to the gym, they were buying Pelotons. And then when the things kind of calmed down with the pandemic crisis, suddenly we saw people shifting back to wanting to get services. And so now we see Peloton in trouble. We see a lot of the retailers that had kind of bulked up on all these goods that they thought that people were going to buy, suddenly having so much inventory they can't get rid of it.
We're joined by Michael Greiner. He's an assistant professor of management at Oakland University with us on today's Megacast. You can find more information on Oakland University's programs, including their management programs, by visiting oakland.edu for more information. And not only is this situation affecting consumers, it's also affecting the retailers themselves. So in some situations, we also saw news recently that retail chains such as Kohl's are kind of curbing their enthusiasm with regards to their profit margins and the profit outlooks in the future. Now, you could say part of that's because of supply chain issues, higher costs, therefore you're not making as great of revenue off of the sales that you do have. But on the other hand, maybe it's not entirely inflation, and it has something to do with online retail really being, and e-commerce being something that's become much more prevalent, especially over the course of the pandemic, especially when it comes to online retailers like Amazon. How much of an impact is that having on our more traditional brick and mortar retailers like Kohl's versus inflation?
Well, now we're talking about two separate issues, basically. On the one hand, retail is an industry that for a long time I've been saying you do not want to invest in because of the fact that in the long run, I think that brick and mortar retailers really are facing a very difficult challenge from Amazon, and not just Amazon, but the other online retailers as well. And really the only ones who've succeeded in kind of facing that challenge. I think that Best Buy has been very successful at doing that. I think Walmart has made some progress in that challenge, but really it's been very difficult for them because of the fact that they do have that investment in the brick and mortar, and that's constantly eating up their revenues, which is something that online retailers just don't have. So in the long run, I think that we're going to continue to see a shift to more and more online spending, and it's going to be more and more difficult for these brick and mortar retailers to succeed. In the short run, though, we also have essentially the same hit with the inventory issue that I was talking about earlier, where, for example, with Target, they had a huge drop in their profits, and it was a big surprise. And a big part of the reason is that they bulked up on these goods that they thought everybody was buying as a result of the pandemic. And then all of a sudden, people shifted back to services. And this kind of fast shift, this is what's causing the supply chain problems too, is that business can't shift this quickly. They have these different supply chains that have been built up. They need to be able to plan for what their inventory is going to be. And with consumers shifting their preferences literally on a dime, it's made it very difficult for industries to be able to figure out how they're going to address this. So what they say with Target, for example, is that number one, they have huge inventory. And so the way that they've been dealing with that is that they've had to discount it. They've had to essentially sell it off at a lower price than they would typically have liked to sell it off, many times selling it off at a loss. There are also examples of them essentially trying to sell them to these different dealers who will buy up excess inventory, kind of overstock as they call it. to try to sell a discount. But either way, you find these retailers in a situation where they've got all this inventory and they want to make space now for the things that people are buying now, as opposed to things that people were buying during the pandemic. And that's kind of the challenge that they're dealing with in the short run right now.
We're joined by Michael Greiner from Oakland University, assistant professor of management at that institution, joining us on the Megacast. And in terms of shifting to online retail as kind of being the paradigm of the future for these retailers like Kohl's or others, competing with Amazon in that space, because that's where Amazon really has been the king of the hill for so long. How much of a chance do you believe that they do have in the long run if they do go away from brick and mortar, given the power that Amazon has? Or do you see in the future there being a situation where Amazon could be forced into a situation that they have to maybe consolidate some of their business to avoid monopolizing?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a tough question. You know, the courts have really whittled down the ability of government to deal with monopolies. And so the power of government to challenge these big monopolistic enterprises is really difficult. And especially with Amazon, you know, they kind of face an interesting situation here where I think most consumers, myself included, by the way, I'm a regular Amazon shopper by way of full disclosure. Most consumers appreciate Amazon. You know, they've done a great job of delivering great value to most consumers, and they do it very conveniently, much more conveniently, frankly, than going to the store. I mean, it's practically, you know, I practically view it as an inconvenience now to have to go to the store rather than just having something delivered to my door, which is crazy. But that's the way things have changed now. And so the way that courts will look at it is that they will frequently look at the monopolistic situation, you know, where Amazon is so dominant in the industry and say, well, how are consumers being affected? And generally speaking, they'd say, well, consumers are making out pretty well as a result of it. The people, frankly, who've been most hurt by Amazon's consolidation instead have been some of the suppliers to Amazon. You know, there's a lot of talk about how, for example, in the publishing industry, there's a lot of consolidation there, and they're trying to essentially stave off the challenge that Amazon has created, because of the fact that Amazon is such a dominant purchaser of books right now that they basically can dictate the terms that the publishers need to deal with. Similarly, you hear about these small dealers who will sell through Amazon, and Amazon ends up capturing a lot of the value that these dealers are getting from the consumers for the goods that they're selling. So we find the situation where, to the average consumer, they say, hey, things are great with Amazon, but it's more on the other side, the supplier side, that you see that Amazon has really been able to use their monopoly power to squeeze these players. And up until now, the courts really haven't cared that much about that kind of an impact. So it's going to require some kind of change. Frankly, I think that you're going to have to see some changes in the laws by Congress before you start to see some real impact on monopolistic behavior by some of these companies. But one final point to make about Amazon is that monopolistic behavior, companies can become powerful within their industry. I mean, a great example is Google. You know, Google is incredibly powerful. I mean, there aren't too many people who say, hey, I'm going to go on my computer and Bing a question, you know, because nobody uses Bing. Everybody uses Google now. And it's because Google does a great job. You know, I mean, that's the bottom line. You know, I have occasionally gone and tried some of the other search engines, and I can tell you consistently Google delivers a better result. So I can see why people go to Google. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with Google delivering a better service and basically besting its competitors as a result of that. Where companies can run into problems, though, is where they use their monopolistic position in one area to try to dominate another industry. And for example, that's where Microsoft got into trouble back in the 1990s when they were trying to use their dominant position in the Windows and in the Office monopolies, essentially positions that they'd built up through really just being in the right place at the right time, I guess you could say. And they were trying to use that position then to essentially kill off Netscape Navigator, which was kind of the original internet browser. I'm pretty sure nobody out there watching now is watching on internet on Netscape Navigator, Reason being that Microsoft used their monopoly power in these other fields to kind of kill it off. And that's what the Department of Justice was responding to. So it's going to be awfully hard, really, for anybody to challenge Amazon on a legal basis in terms of their being monopolistic, because of the fact, number one, they deliver great value to the consumers, and number two, they aren't really using their monopoly position to then try to dominate in other industries. Like, say, for example, if they suddenly decide they were going to get into the car rental industry and had figured out a way that they're going to use their position of dominance in retail to dominate the car rental industry, well, then the government might take notice. But with the rest of the stuff, it's going to be awfully hard to challenge Amazon.
We're joined by Michael Greiner. He is from Oakland University, an assistant professor of market management, my apologies, at Oakland University. Assistant professor. I caught myself mid-word on that one. Oakland.edu for more information. Oakland.edu for more info on all their programs in their business school. But before we let you go, I do want to talk about the gubernatorial race here in the state of Michigan and money that's in politics. We'd already heard before even the primary, just the exorbitant amount of money that was already in the Gretchen Whitmer re-election campaign. And now with Tudor Dixon getting the nomination on the Republican side, we're already seeing that the DeVos family has contributed over $4 million either to outside groups that are attacking Governor Whitmer or to support directly the Tudor Dixon campaign. In terms of the money that is in politics, given that there is such lacking regulation on the amount of money that can be put into political campaigns by those that aren't necessarily involved in the political campaign, where do you see this going in the future as being something that is a key factor in deciding our elections?
Well, it's a big problem right now. There's no doubt about that. And what it comes down to is that back in the 1970s, there was a Supreme Court decision called Buckley v. Vallejo. And that basically said that spending money in political campaigns is the equivalent of speech. So you can't restrict the spending of money because it's protected by the First Amendment, just like speech is protected by the First Amendment. So that's kind of what that case said. And that's the basis of subsequent decisions, things like Citizens United, which I'm sure everybody has heard of, which basically said that corporations are able to spend money without restriction in political campaigns. And so this is the regime that we've kind of found ourselves in, which is this situation where more and more you see the ability of the very wealthy to be able to contribute to these campaigns with really relatively little impact. Now, the surprising thing about this, and this is something that's kind of come through in the political science research, though, is that that despite there is an advantage to having a lot of money, no doubt about it, but it's not as much of an advantage as you would think. That actually the relationship between having more money and winning the elections is not all that strong. And secondly, the other thing that you've seen the growth of online donors. So despite the fact that, say, for example, you mentioned in the Whitmer campaign, the DeVos family on the Republican side, you have some very large donors who contribute enormous amounts of money. What's amazing is on the Democratic side, the Democrats actually are raising as much, if not more money. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence recently that the Republicans have actually been pulling back on their spending in a couple of states because they can't keep up with the financial wherewithal of the Democrats. The reason being, the Democrats are very, very effective at raising money at the grassroots level through the internet. And that's been something that they started back in the 1992 election and has increased since then. Barack Obama really became the master of that, and now everywhere you go within the Democratic Party, you see that most of these contributions are small contributions that are solicited through the internet, and it's been very successful. So that's kind of the irony, which is that these very wealthy individuals, despite the fact that they've kind of been given this advantage by the courts in terms of being able to spend money in these races, they actually feel that they're on the defensive. And it's interesting to note that in this race between Whitmer and I'm blanking out on her, Tudor Dixon, Whitmer has something like 20 times more money than Tudor Dixon right now. And again, it used to be that wasn't the case, where you expected that the Republicans would have more money. But because of the ability that Democrats have developed in being able to raise money online, they've actually been able to essentially match the strength of these large contributions from corporations and the very wealthy.
Michael, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us and giving us some more insight onto all these different issues happening out in the market. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Have a great weekend.
You as well. Oakland.edu to keep up to date on everything happening at Oakland University, including their programs in their business schools, including their management program as well. Oakland.edu. Let's take a break. On the other side, we'll talk literacy with the CEO of Read to a Child. This is the Megacast.
Connect with local leaders, philanthropists, and more. The Greater West Bloomfield Chamber of Commerce presents the 2022 Leadership Breakfast. Join the Chamber for a morning of insight with guest speaker Laura Granneman, with the whole event emceed by Fox 2 News anchor Roop Raj. Join your local businesses at the Wabeat Country Club September 13th at 8:30 a.m. Order your tickets by September 6th at westbloomfieldchamber.com/breakfast. We'll see you there.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head on, visit michigan.gov/flu.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily 1-hour TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program by visiting civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on our entire network of stations, including My Michigan TV. Whether you're a student returning to the classroom or an adult in the workplace, your ability to read plays a critical role in your upward mobility in our society. For some, literacy isn't a guarantee, which is why organizations such as Read to a Child are here to help bridge the gaps in how our kids are learning to read. Joining us now on the Megacast is the CEO of Read to a Child, Paul Lamarreau. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Tyler, it is my pleasure to be here. I always like talking about Read to a Child.
Yeah, and we love talking about this issue as well. Literacy is such a critical issue in all areas of our life and in ways that people really don't realize. So for those that aren't familiar with Read to a Child, tell us about the history and, of course, the mission of your organization.
Well, Read to a Child basically combines the magic of the read aloud and the power of positive mentoring. And one child, one mentor, 1 hour a week, really provides all sorts of magical outcomes for the student in terms of literacy and socio-emotional well-being, self-confidence, self-esteem, all that. So it's really a twofold program, not specifically about literacy, but that's an important component. In 1989 in New York City, a Manhattan businessman visited a local classroom, under-resourced classroom, as is often the case in big cities, and saw the issue with the kids not being able really to read. So he gathered together 5 or 6 of his co-workers, brought them down at lunchtime and had them read aloud to the children in the program. So much research has been done on the power of the read aloud. It's one of those things that is not even in doubt that it's a powerful mechanism to help children's vocabulary and help them grow in terms of being lifelong lovers of reading, and that's a key driver for future success. But those 6 co-workers and Arthur Tannenbaum was the gentleman's name, then decided to go off and start their own nonprofit called Everybody Wins, because their thought was the students win, the volunteer readers win, the administration wins, the family wins, everybody wins. So for many years, the organization's name was Everybody Wins. It went to the greater Boston area and then started expanding. It's obviously New York, Washington, D.C. And then in 2006, some of these chapters of Everybody Wins decided to get together. Los Angeles, Greater Boston, Hartford, together we formed a larger organization and then renamed ourselves Read to a Child to be basically to say what we do. And since that point, we've expanded into Miami and most importantly into Detroit in 2012 as we saw the real issues with literacy in Michigan as a whole and in Metro Detroit specifically. And we've been growing our program in Metro Detroit since.
So you mentioned the literacy component is an important factor of this, but it's not everything in the mission of Read to a Child and what you do in communities all throughout the state of Michigan and around and beyond the state of Michigan as well. Talk about the Read Aloud mentor element of that and how beyond just helping a child learn to read or improve their reading skills, how that mentorship and how that relationship 1 hour a week with these kids can really have a greater impact on their life and on their development.
Yeah, I myself have read over the last 8 years that I've been with Read to a Child with 2 separate children, starting in 1st grade and reading all the way through 4th. So I know exactly how it feels to be a mentor. And I just finished with my 4th grader this last school year. So I miss him terribly right now. But you create that relationship. And just to have a caring adult show up regularly for a child, just for them, not for their friends, their cousins, their brothers, sisters, but for them and them only is huge for their self-esteem, for their sense of being validated and valued and heard, which everybody wants to be. And they often might not get that anywhere else. So, and then when you do it week over week, year over year, you really build a strong bond. And then you're just sort of, you're a role model. You're showing them how it is to be in the world, and you're just showing up regularly. You don't have to have any extra skills to be a volunteer mentor in our program. Just be willing to show up for a child and being the caring adult that you are. So it's very powerful.
We're joined by Paul Lamarreau. He is the CEO of Read to a Child, joining us on the Megacast. You can find more information by visiting readtoachild.org. Readtoachild.org for more information with locations in Boston, with operations in Boston, Hartford, Los Angeles, Miami, and of course in Michigan, in Detroit. Readtoachild.org for more information. And you can also call them at 781-489-5910. 781-489-5910. In terms of results, Paul, what are some of the outcomes that do come from having a child participating in Read to a Child and having that mentorship and, of course, that literacy training that is there once a week for an hour?
Yeah, so the school teacher who knows their child the best in the elementary school, and we ask those teachers to refer students into the program that would benefit from that one-on-one time and that need, and help, a helping hand with their literacy. So those children that are then referred in by the teacher are then assessed at the end of the year on 8 separate metrics, which include, improvement in vocabulary and then reading ability and listening comprehension, critical thinking, but then other things like have their self-esteem improved. And so it's that assessment that the teacher does for each student that tells us how well the student is progressing during that school year when they're participating in the program. So it's been very encouraging, the results. This past year, 78% of the children that participated in the program improved in all 8 of the categories that we measured, some literacy, some social emotional. So clearly it's having a positive effect on the children on both the literacy front and the well-being front.
Paul, if people would like to participate in this program, if they'd like to mentor a child, read with them once a week in any of your locations, but especially here in Michigan, how do they get involved and what sort of process do they go through to then be put into this program?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you go to the website, as you pointed out, there's a Get Involved button that you can click. And There are really two types of volunteers. One comes from a corporate partner where we have a whole bunch of people from a local corporation that come and read, or a community volunteer. And there's a process for each at our website. But the bottom line is you fill out an interest form. You know that the commitment is going to be once a week, and possibly you could be doing this virtually. You might not be going into the classroom. The pandemic changed everything for us. So we've been doing a lot of this mentoring over Zoom, just like we're here right today on Zoom. And that's been powerful. And the results I told you about were from Zoom mentoring. They're even more powerful when you get in person. But depending upon whether the school will allow mentors into the classroom or we keep doing it on Zoom, you'll have a commitment of either an hour, maybe a week, or maybe even 30 minutes if you're doing it on Zoom. And then you'll go through a background check. And then we have an online training that you do, and then you'll be matched with a student. And boy, is that a fun process when you get to meet your reading buddy for the first time, whether it's on Zoom or in person. And then you begin.
And then how long does that relationship then sustain itself for? Is that for one school year, or could that be for years beyond that?
It could. I mean, we ask that a mentor commit to a year. Ideally, they're going to stay with the student right through the end of fourth grade. We know how important it is to get students reading by fourth grade, which is why the whole third grade law in Michigan came about. But if you can only do it for 1 year, that's 1 year well served for the student. Most folks, once they start for a year, they do anything they possibly can to stay with the child. Many people have left the job they were at with our corporate partner, gone somewhere else. And because of Zoom, wherever they are, they could keep that relationship going, which has been fantastic.
We're joined by Paul Lamarreau. He is the CEO of Read to a Child, with us on the Megacast. Read to a Child, with locations in Michigan and Detroit. Can be found at readtoachild.org, readtoachild.org for more information. Beyond the volunteer aspect of it and the mentoring aspect of being involved with Read to a Child, what are some other ways that at this time that would be important for our audience to know about how they can help Read to a Child continue its mission across the U.S., but especially right here in Detroit?
It's also important to note we're in a few schools in Pontiac, and our program in Pontiac will continue to grow as well. But donating, as I mentioned earlier, we have volunteers that are from the community, and then we have volunteers that are part of a corporation. Corporations also typically fund us. 20 volunteers come and participate in a school, and then they'll give us X amount of dollars in order to operate our program. But when community volunteers are in the schools, we're always looking for other sources of funding. So donating is the biggest way that anyone can help us. And if you go to our website, you'll see donate buttons as well. The other thing is to just let people know about Read to a Child, be ambassadors for us. Who knows who works at what corporation, and that corporation might be interested in foundational support for children in their community. And we're a great opportunity for that. So we'd love to talk to any representative of corporate social responsibility or human resources at any organization in Metro Detroit and show them how they can help. Finally, we have a day coming up in October called National Read to a Child Day. It's October 20th. We'll be doing events, read aloud events all over the country. But I encourage everyone on that day and every day really to find a child, an appropriate child, pick up a book and read to them. That is just going to have immeasurable benefit to both you and the child moving forward.
Paul, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Great to be here.
You can learn more information and get involved with Read to a Child by visiting readtoachild.org. That is going to do it for this week's editions of the Megacast. As always, you can keep up to date with us and find all of our full shows and every interview from this week and far beyond at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. While you're there, head over to our local news page for updated information on stories across the state of Michigan, including very helpful links to up-to-date and accurate information on COVID-19 from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division. That does it for this week's Megacast. We'll return on Monday with new editions of the program.